It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
The Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the Hyperspace. Podcasting in the 25th century, the interweb's first and still only podcast. My name is Jared.
My name is Matt.
And I am Mike.
And today, guys, we're going to spend this episode remembering a screen icon, the types of which Hollywood just doesn't have anymore. We lost Sean Connery on October 31st, 2020. And of course, you know, guys, from our vantage point in the 25th century, we've known about this day for quite some time.
Yeah.
But we've had to sit on it until after it actually happened. We can't warn the people, you know, because that's against the rules of time and space.
Well, we learned that, you know, with the Almanac and Biff. We can't change time and history.
We can't tell you.
Everyone have bad haircuts in hotels then and
Yes.
throwing ashtrays at people.
Yes. All of that stuff.
It happens. It happened.
But we thought we would take an episode to talk about Sean Connery, because certainly the films he's been a part of is definitely part of the hyperspace DNA.
That's already been.
Yes, I mean, listen, I will tell you, the people who talk to me about our show, I am still hearing comments about the Zardoz episode from like a year ago.
Zardoz has made me a better person.
Zardoz has spoken.
Hey, listen, Sean Connery was one of those, you know, kind of actors and men that you just don't see anymore. They're just...
No.
When I say a dying breed, I mean the breed is almost dead.
Gone.
But I mean,
yeah,
we should definitely spend some time and celebrate him, because I mean, he was more than an icon. He was a legend of an actor and a legend of a man. I mean, Sean Connery.
Legend.
If you met Sean Connery in person, you wouldn't just be like, "Hey, it's Sean Connery." You would get down on your knees and you would start to worship the ground he stood on, because that's the kind of man he was. Except for Mike. Mike wouldn't do that.
No, I wouldn't.
You would. You would. You should. No, but Sean Connery was in some of my favorite movies growing up.
Sure.
He's in some of my favorite top 10 movies now.
Well, he was in one of the first movies I remember seeing as a kid.
Man, that's great. Well, I'm anxious to hear about all of this.
We should just dive right in.
Sure. But I'm going to tell people right up front that if you're looking for the definitive history of Sean Connery's career, this is not that show.
No, we should talk about movies that we like with him in.
Yeah,
Wait, it's not?
No, it's not at all.
So I spent the last 4 hours
reading Wikipedia for nothing? Yes, you did.
Yeah.
No, because we're just going to do like we always do and talk about these things through our own personal experiences, and hope that our listeners relate to those experiences.
Oh, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
Why don't you kick us off?
The first movie I saw him in, or the first time I became aware of him, was in 1983. There were 2 James Bond movies released that year. One was with Roger Moore, Octopussy, and Sean Connery was doing the sort of the unofficial James Bond, Never Say Never Again.
The alternate universe James Bond.
Correct. And I remember seeing on a show, it was hosted by Leonard Nimoy, of all people. It's called Lights, Camera, Action or
The
something.
one on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, something like that. But he was talking about these 2 movies being made.
Hello, I'm Leonard Nimoy, and welcome to Stand By, Lights, Camera, Action. We're going to take you around the world on location to movie sets. You're going to see just how movies are made. Now, let's go join the circus as we visit the set of the new James Bond film, Octopussy.
So the show on Nickelodeon was talking about.
Yes, and
Octopussy.
at that point, but look, at that point, the only James Bond movie I had seen was Moonraker. So I only knew about James Bond as Roger Moore.
Yeah, same here.
And when this show came on, it's like, well, Sean Connery talked about, he was the original James Bond. And I was like, wow, whoa, what? So that's how I first became aware of who Sean Connery was through a Leonard Nimoy TV special.
And that he was a filthy liar.
Yeah, because, man, I'd seen Roger Moore in space, and that's all I needed to see.
I mean, I was the same way. I mean, James Bond, listen, it's hard for a lot of people, a lot of listeners to kind of comprehend and grasp that, when we were kids, at least when I was a kid, Roger Moore was James Bond.
Yes.
Sean Connery was already gone.
For kids of the 70s and 80s, Roger Moore was...
And I was the same way. I mean, I really wasn't a big James Bond fan when I was really young. I knew they were out. I'd see them every now and then on TV, but, I think the first time I remember Sean Connery, and I kind of knew who Sean Connery was, because I think you kind of knew generally who he was, because he was a big actor. Even if you didn't know him as James Bond, you still knew Sean Connery. He was a recognizable face. But it was Time Bandits that I remember him in the first. And I kind of remember there was this whole... I was probably like 10, 11 years old, where like you kind of become aware that, like, I remember Time Bandits. I remember Highlander,
yes.
And these aren't great movies. I know Time Bandits is pretty great, but that's kind of like my first like introduction to Sean Connery. And he seemed like he was old in 1981, 82 when these movies came out.
You know what his condition to Terry Gilliam was for being in Time Bandits?
What?
That Terry Gilliam could not shoot him getting on a horse.
Like if he got on a horse, he couldn't get shot?
No, he couldn't shoot him getting on the horse.
He couldn't film it.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Shut up. That was the condition he gave.
I mean, obviously that clause wasn't in Zardoz.
Well, I wonder, did he give a reason for that?
He just thought he didn't look good getting on a horse.
Oh.
I mean, Sean Connery in 1981 was probably already what? I don't know.
Well, he was 90 when he died in 2020, so do the math.
So he's about almost 50, I guess, right?
In 81,
man, that's old.
He would have been 51.
But and Zardoz, he was like, God, he's my age in Zardoz. Oh, it's so bad. He always looked perpetually like 55, 60 years old.
Yeah,
he never looked like...
Well,
once you get to the Bond ages, but after Bond, he was always that old
Once
man.
he grew the beard, he froze in time.
Well, here's the thing. He did have this awkward stage because, like, if you talk to my wife, Dr. No through Thunderball era of Sean Connery is the handsomest man who's ever walked the face of the earth. And,
and he was a hairy man. There you go. He was a hairy man.
He was a hairy man. But he did hit an awkward phase. And I think it started around Diamonds Are Forever when he started to look older than he was.
Before the beard.
Before the beard. He had Zardoz is included in this phase where he just kind of looked like a middle-aged dude.
Like then he grew the beard and he was...
And then when he became, Ramius, the captain of the Red October.
Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Jones. Then when my wife says that's when he got hot again. When he had the beard and the hairpiece.
Listen, that man, he'll never be faulted for not being a handsome man. I mean,
sure.
He's as masculine, and he might as well just have a statue carved and just should say masculinity at the bottom, not even his name.
Masculinity.
I think we're going to get a whole new audience after this one.
The masculinity.
No, but that's Sean Connery. I mean,
This show brought to you by Old Spice.
But I mean, he's like that. He's like one of those kind of like old school actors you would have seen in like a movie from the 50s. He had that kind of ultra masculine
actor we saw from a movie in the 50s. Did he go back that far?
Yeah, he did. His first movie was Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
And that was the movie I saw.
Experience again the incredible adventures of Darby O'Gill and the lost kingdom of the Little People.
Once you're here, there's no going back.
Here's entertainment to delight the entire family with Sean Connery and King Brian, the fun-lovingest leprechaun ever to rule the land of enchantment. Don't miss Walt Disney's Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Rated G. It's a touch of magic from Walt Disney.
One of the first movies I ever saw. I saw Darby O'Gill and the Little People in the drive-in, and it scared the ever-loving crap out of me, the scene with the ghosts.
Man, you and the drive-in have some bad memories, man.
I mean, that...
Your parents are taking you to some rough stuff.
I seriously think I might have fainted. I'm not kidding.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, there's a scene where the girl runs into the mountain, and everyone's afraid to go to the mountain because of the banshees. And then I think they see one up there, but then they bring her home and there's like a knock at the door, and they open the door and a banshee comes through the door. And I really think I might have fainted because I don't remember anything after that.
I gotta look that up. I've never seen it. I gotta look that scene up.
Oh,
I mean, I was little too. I was like probably like 3 or 4.
And you.
I mean, I could have, because I just don't remember. I just remember that thing coming through the door, and then I was like at home in bed.
You didn't fall asleep. There's no way that could have happened.
Oh, that's funny.
But that is funny. Yeah, so that was his first big role.
And did he sing in that?
He did. He did. Not very well.
Oh, she is my dear, my darling one, her eyes so sparkling full of fun. No other can match the likes of her.
He was playing an Irish guy, a Scottish guy playing an Irish guy. Probably not too much of a stretch.
Well,
they both have weird
Sean
accents.
Connery had a heck of a career when you think about it. I mean, he worked in his young prime, and he famously as James Bond, and some of these actors could have just gone the wayside, just kind of like faded into history. But he had a whole resurgence of his career in the second half. I mean,
much like George Lazenby. No, that's not true.
But I mean, like the movies that he made in the 80s and 90s are as famous for him as he was when he was James Bond.
Yeah. I mean, he was still a bankable box office star well into the 90s. I think the last...
finally just retired. He's just like, I'm done.
You know what's something funny about Sean Connery? He took some roles, and he never like compromised who Sean Connery was as a person. Meaning, as an actor, he always brought Sean Connery with him. I'll give you 2 examples. In The Highlander, in Highlander 2, he was the Spaniard.
Yes.
And the Spaniard never had a Spanish accent. Yeah. He talked to the Highlander, in the most Scottish brogue you've ever heard.
Yes,
and then
like
later
he didn't
on,
even try.
As Ramius, he didn't even try a Russian accent. He was just a Scottish Russian.
They did speak Russian at the beginning of the movie, then they switched over.
Yeah, but everyone that switched still carried a Russian accent.
Sure, except for him. He was Scottish.
Then he went to Scottish.
Sean, I can just hear it now. John McTiernan's like, John, do you think it's possible that you could do...
Can I continue to speak as a Scotsman?
Can you do a Russian accent? No, I'm not going to be doing that. Okay, that's cool. Let's move on.
Sean, everyone around you is attempting a Russian accent. Maybe you could try one?
I'm not going to do that.
Okay. That's
no,
we
won't be doing that.
It won't stand out. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying, Matt. Like,
I don't fault him for it.
He definitely wasn't a Spaniard in Highlander.
He just wore that ridiculous outfit. And
yes, he
had
did.
The Scottish accent, which confused me as a kid. I wasn't quite sure what was going on.
Yeah, because the movie's called The Highlander, and it stars Sean Connery. You think surely Sean Connery is the Highlander.
We're shooting a movie called The Highlander, and we want you to be in it as a Spaniard.
That's fantastic. Wait a minute. A Spaniard.
I'll be a Spaniard, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, listen, it must be said.
What? You've got the quintessential Spaniard, and then you get a guy from France to be the Highlander.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, man.
Christopher
Or Belgium.
Lambert.
I don't know where he came from. He's one of those.
Yeah, Christopher Lambert. But Sean Connery, he also, despite being a megastar, he wasn't afraid to pay the rent.
He paid the rent a lot.
There was a lot of rent paying going on in those lean years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he seems like the kind of guy that was fully committed to paying the rent. Like, it didn't matter what he did.
Man, you are not kidding. I mean,
listen,
we know that in that Zardoz outfit, he was paying some hard basement floor rent on that one.
But, he just did it. He committed to it. Hey, listen, we're going to dress you in this strange G-string thing that's just barely going to cover your bits and pieces.
Your
tell me more.
hairy body.
Tell me more. Good.
All right.
I can do that.
You're going to be on a horse,
no, you can't
pretty
shoot
much
me on a
naked.
Horse. No, naked on a horse. You can't
You're
shoot
going to
me
be
on
on a horse at the beginning. And in front of you is going to be a giant head telling you how bad your penis is.
The penis is evil. The penis shoots seeds and makes new life to poison the earth with a plague of men.
Yes.
Oh, damn.
We're in.
At least give me a hot meal later.
Dude, Matt, you sound like Daryl Hammond on Saturday Night Live doing...
Yeah.
Yes, it's Trebek. I just watched that today, actually.
That's good. Celebrity Jeopardy. Look it up on YouTube.
This is the sound a doggy makes. Mr. Connery.
Moo.
No.
Well, that's the sound your mother made last night.
Okay, that's not necessary.
Oh,
yeah.
but
yeah, he paid the rent all right. And listen, some of those are great. The fact that you can see Sean Connery in some questionable, low budget movies is fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, you were talking about how you were not exposed to him as James Bond, but my dad actually watched James Bond, so I was actually I kind of knew about him at age as playing Bond. So I kind of knew of him, as I was watching Time Bandits and stuff like that. I knew who he was and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I recognized Sean Connery, and I knew it was a big deal that he was in it, but I still wasn't familiar with his previous stuff. I couldn't pick it out, but I still knew who he was. That's the kind of actor Sean Connery was. Even as a young kid, I still knew who Sean Connery was. He was just everywhere.
The first Connery Bond I saw was Diamonds Are Forever, and it was on ABC would put a Bond on their Sunday night movie, once every couple of months.
Tonight.
Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are. Sean Connery is at it again.
You're a terrific guy. A little weird, but a terrific guy.
This time,
Well, I just don't enjoy messing around with a guy as tough as James Bond.
he's got everybody fooled.
You just killed James Bond.
Is that who it was?
How clever you are, Mr. Bond.
James Bond discovers diamonds are forever.
The evening may not be a total loss after all.
Next.
And I was probably 11 or 12. And on that night, it was Diamonds Are Forever. And that's the first Bond. I mean, this was firmly, Roger Moore was getting close to being done, I think. And I never saw a Roger Moore Bond in a theater. I'd always seen them on TBS or, whatever. The first Bond movie I saw in the theater was GoldenEye.
Yeah, I think
actually.
GoldenEye was mine also.
But Diamonds Are Forever was the first one I saw, and it made an impression on me because at the beginning of that movie, he starts to strangle a woman with her bikini. and when I was watching it, I thought, whoa, well, he's not playing around. So that's my first Connery Bond memory. This Diamonds Are Forever. Probably not his best work as Bond in that one.
No, I think mine was Goldfinger. Was the first one I saw.
Goldfinger's.
But it's funny because I didn't have a
gold
desire
standard.
to watch the Connery Bonds. As a kid, Roger Moore was my gold standard of James Bond, which is kind of strange to say, but
No, that's that's totally valid.
Like I remember seeing like the Connery Bonds pop on it. I didn't watch them. I'm like, I'm not interested in watching that old James Bond.
Well,
it wasn't until I think like later, maybe even like high school or college, I started watching some Connery Bonds, and it's fantastic. But I had to be older to appreciate it.
Exactly, because Roger Moore was a lot more kid friendly, I think.
Oh, it was total Hollywood of the 80s.
It was his movies were a lot of live action cartoons almost, and
completely.
And that's why it appealed to me, and that's why I still, Roger Moore has a special place in my heart for that. But I can look back now and look at his movies and say, yeah, these are not great cinema, but they were fun. Now I look back at Connery's Bonds like you, Matt. When I was a kid, I really didn't care, but his Bonds are some of the coolest just because, of the setting, the early 60s, Sean Connery, of course, and his very charismatic portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Connery's Bonds are definitely on the top of my list as far as that series goes.
So I'm going to jump a little ahead here, until he played Henry Jones in The Last Crusade, there was one movie that stuck out that was my favorite of his, was The Untouchables.
Yeah, The Untouchables is good.
I remember that must have had a heck of a run on HBO, because I remember watching that a lot on cable, and I loved The Untouchables. I thought that was like one of the coolest movies I had ever seen. I mean,
it's got a great soundtrack.
Watch it. That was great.
Yeah.
And he was fantastic in that movie. But he looked like old as dirt in that movie. I think he's only like 55 in that movie.
That was 87?
87, so 56, 57.
The Untouchables is one of the great movies. Love that movie.
Want to get Capone? Here's how you get him. He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way. And that's how you get Capone.
It's just one of those movies that's like darn near perfect.
Yeah.
Even when you overlook Costner's performance, it's still a great.
I thought he was good in that.
Costner's Costner. I mean, I can't.
Yeah, he plays Kevin Costner, but
he's sort of vanilla.
But he's very vanilla.
That's just kind of his deal.
Just the kind of character he's supposed to be.
But The Untouchables was a fun movie to watch.
That's where De Niro was Scarface and walking around with the bat.
Oh, what a great scene.
Yeah, and that's the one he won an Oscar for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my favorite movie is the one he did for Golan Globus. Sword of the Valiant.
Legend of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
The funny thing, though, is I do remember watching that movie because at the beginning, there's some kind of ceremony and Sean Connery walks in. He's the Green Knight.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And he gets his head cut off. And then he just starts talking with his head laying there on the floor. Do you remember that?
What?
I gotta watch it again. I've seen it.
You've never seen it? It was on cable one day, I remember.
I gotta watch. I've seen that.
It makes me laugh.
It has Miles O'Keefe in it. How much O'Keefe? Miles O'Keefe.
When Mike just goes, well, my favorite Connery role was in From Golan and Globus. That struck me as very funny. Oh,
I'm looking on his lineup here. There was another one I forgot about. It's called The Name of the Rose. You ever watch that one?
I heard that good.
That had Christian Slater,
a young Christian Slater in it.
He was like 15 or something.
Yeah,
I remember I had a history teacher. She said the movie looked great, but the story was shit. She said that.
Did you ever watch the movie? It's actually a pretty cool movie.
I have not seen it.
It's a cool movie.
Is that with Michelle Pfeiffer?
No, that was
that's Lady Hawk.
Lady Hawk. I love Lady Hawk too. It's such a great weird movie. But The Name of the Rose is cool. But he did a lot of stuff. He was just all over the 80s and 90s. He did a great job. Believe it or not, my second favorite role of his of all the movies is Red October. And maybe because it came out at a time where like that kind of movie was like super exciting as a blockbuster for me. Yeah. But like I love him in that movie as Captain Ramius.
Yeah, I've seen it and I just can't remember it at all. I've only seen it one time.
It's a really solid movie. And that was the first movie that came out after Last Crusade So that's like the first movie that came out after I was like a Sean Connery fan. Yeah, Red October is a really solid movie even today. I mean, it has some, obviously dated visual effects, and the geopolitical map has changed a lot since 1990, but it's a really solid, espionage thriller type film.
Yeah, I loved him in that movie. But Sean Connery, what a span of a career.
Well, he had a small role in another famous movie, very small role, and that was The Longest Day.
He was on The Longest Day?
Yes. When the Scots arrived to the beach, he's on one of the boats. Real quick question: has anyone seen Outland? I've never seen Outland.
No. Oh crap! I wanted to talk about Outland, so that's good.
One
Thanks for reminding me.
That's one I've always wanted to watch. I saw a little bit of it when I was a kid, and it looked like it was kind of intense.
I must have seen Outland,
but I've never seen it. It's one I've always wanted to watch, and I just haven't got around to
now,
it.
Outland is pretty cool, and it feels a lot like Alien.
I'm looking at some stills of it right now. It looks like a precursor to Alien.
Well, it came out after Alien, but like when I watched that movie, I saw it first on TV. I thought for the longest time this movie took place in the same world as Alien, because they talk about, quote unquote, the company. It's some nameless force. It's kind of like a Western in space, and it's definitely worth checking out. It's directed by Peter Hyams. He did 2010, and it's a pretty solid sci-fi film, and it definitely has the feel of like Alien did, shot in a lot of the same styles. And
so it says here in the trivia, the script was originally intended to be set in a Western period, but writer-director Peter Hyams decided to move it to outer space due to the influence of Alien.
Oh, well, there you go. It's definitely worth tracking down and watching. It's a lot of fun.
I'll watch it.
And I remember
if I sat through Zardoz with him, I'll sit through that.
Oh yeah, Outland.
Jerry Goldsmith did the music. So
yeah, he did.
I bet it does have a lot of familiarity.
And
Alien.
interestingly enough, it takes place on one of the moons of Jupiter. So directed by 2010 guy.
There you go.
Wow. But yeah, nice. Thank you for reminding me about that.
You ever do? Did he ever do any voiceover? Was he ever in an animated movie? I don't think so.
He did the Dragonheart.
Dragonheart. That was
he was really good. That movie, I liked it when I saw it in the theater. I don't know if it would hold up now, but
great soundtrack.
I thought
great
he
score.
Was
yeah,
really
the
good.
score is really good. I watched it on DVD like a couple of years after it came out in theaters, and maybe the novelty of just a Sean Connery dragon had worn off by then. But
you know what? That movie was all budget for the dragon. At the time, that dragon was pretty cool. But
I just remember the scene where the dragon is, they do that little thing, how they get money, where he kills the dragon.
Yeah.
And the dragon always falls in the water, and the water is like 2 feet deep. And,
yeah.
Dennis Quaid's like, you're supposed to go in deeper. And Sean Connery goes, it doesn't go any deeper.
But I think that's probably his only animated voice work. And
it says he did something. It says in 2012. No, he did a few voiceovers in his older years here.
Oh, okay.
But nothing that I know what it is. Sir Billy, I don't know what that is. But he did some stuff. But he was always a front in the camera kind of guy. Even when he was doing stuff like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That was his last role, wasn't it?
It was The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
It's the one that made him quit, I guess.
He played Alan Quatermain, which, by the way, if you've never read any of the Alan Quatermain books from 1876, I highly recommend them. They're fantastic books, and he is nothing like Alan Quatermain. But I thought it was a fun movie.
Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for it.
I mean, I thought the idea was probably better than the execution.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of interesting to have all those like historical literary figures together, but
it kind of also fell into that time period where CG was all the rage, and they could put some moderately interesting things together quickly, and that's really all that movie was as much CG as they could squeeze into a giant green screen psych studio, and that's what it was.
Yeah,
it wasn't a great movie, but it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that was his last movie that he did. Now, an interesting story popped up right after he died. He was supposed to do a movie with Brett Ratner.
Oh, that's a great. It just shows what a schmuck Ratner is.
Yeah, and Connery, he was...
Well, what's the story? I don't know what the story is.
Oh, yeah, we'll tell you. I forget what the name of the movie was going to be.
I'll look it up while you...
This popped up on... This popped up on the feeds after his death.
Apparently the writers told this story without mentioning the name of the director.
But everybody knew by the process of elimination, Sean Connery's final film that he didn't do was directed by Brett Ratner, was going to be directed by him. So Sean Connery wanted, he was in it to win it. He wanted to be part of the process. He wanted to know what was going on, and there was this extended underwater sequence. And Sean Connery wanted to know how they were going to pull this off. He's like, I'm supposed to be underwater here for like 7 minutes. So
wait, what year is this supposed to be made?
It was like, it was mid-2000s.
He'd been talking with the writers for a long time and been working very closely with the writers.
All right.
And when it came to the scene, he was finally like, hey, I want to talk to the director. So they finally get Brett Ratner to talk to Sean Connery, and Sean Connery's like, okay, how are you going to do this? And Brett Ratner was like, oh, we're just going to do it, movie magic. And Sean Connery said, Brian Koppelman, he's the guy who told this story, says you could hear the silent anger on Sean's end of the phone. And he said, I started making movies before your daddy started pleasuring himself. I want to know, shot by shot, how will you execute this?
Can you read that in his voice, please?
No, I can't. I will not attempt to this. So
your daddy before he started pleasuring himself.
So Ratner said, okay, Friday at 11 a.m., I'll call you and I'll run you through my storyboards and shot list. So Sean Connery says, okay, fine. So at 11:15, Sean Connery calls the writers and he goes, where the F is the director? And we're like, we don't know. And they said you could hear him sigh, and he goes, oh, for Christ's sakes, I just turned on the telly and there he is.
He saw him at a tennis match on TV.
What?
He saw Brett Ratner on TV at a tennis match.
So he says, and they go, there who is? And Sean Connery says, Ratner, he's in the GD female players box at the effing French Open. He goes, I'm afraid, boys, I've agreed to do a movie directed by a fraud. You've done very well, but I'm quitting this thing today. And then that was it. He quit.
Bizarre is that?
That's the last movie that he did.
Jeez.
Or that he didn't do. So thanks for nothing, Brett Ratner.
Yeah, they figured it out because about this time there was a story of him walking off a big budget movie where he was set up to make quite a nice paycheck, and it was Ratner's. And but everyone, I mean, the stories with Ratner. I mean, Ratner's a schmuck anyway. If you've ever heard him talk, he's just, he's just a loser.
That was.
It's just, where's the director? Oh, jeez. He looks at the TV, sees him sitting in a freaking box at a French
What are the
Open.
odds that he just turns on the TV and sees him right then and there on the phone conversation?
Imagine how annoyed he was.
Oh, man. Connery was, I think, to be admired for kind of sticking to his retirement guns.
Yeah, he did, because Spielberg tried to get him to come out for the last Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and I remember they published a letter that he had written back to Spielberg, and he said, I'm having too much fun playing golf
Yeah.
But he's like, good luck. I've always said if I someday, strike it rich or whatever and make enough to live by not doing anything for the rest of my life, then I would enjoy that time.
Well,
But
considering how hard he worked too, because
exactly.
he worked consistently.
But a lot of people who have great wealth, they're driven and they want to do more. They would get bored. But I admire him for just saying, you know what, I got more money than I can ever spend, and I just want to relax for the last 20 years of my life. And that's what he did.
Yeah. I mean, he went out on top the way he wanted to go. I mean,
he really did drop out of the public eye.
I mean, it's funny that you say that because like I forgot about Sean Connery for a long time.
Yeah.
And I remember, God, maybe it was like a year ago or 2 years ago. I didn't forget about him that long, but I started looking him up on Google and seeing pictures. I'm like, oh my God, look how old Sean Connery got. And
yeah, he did. He was 90.
I mean, he was 90.
That was a good full life.
Good on him. He yeah, exactly. But like, you didn't see anything of Sean Connery since like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and then the next thing you see is like really old Sean Connery,
like frail.
Man, it's tough to see that kind of thing.
And I guess his wife said he had been suffering with dementia for a couple of years. So, he really wasn't his self for the last few years of his life.
When they drop out of the spotlight because they don't want, the family doesn't want this.
Exactly. He said he died in Nassau, Bahamas. So
yeah, he died in the Bahamas in his sleep. So I mean, at 90, I mean anybody would wish for something like that probably.
Yeah,
as if they knew when their time was up. But we haven't really touched on at all probably one of his most impactful roles for us, and that is the Henry Jones Sr.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that is when Connery like fully became, I became a fan, I guess, when Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade came out.
I mean, such a good movie anyway, but I mean, that movie wouldn't have been nearly as entertaining without Sean Connery in that role.
No.
Well, I think it worked because Harrison Ford and Sean Connery have the same sort of disposition.
Yeah, yes, perfectly cast.
The quiet man,
and
the dry banter between those two was just so funny. I mean, it was such a. I remember I saw that like 3 times. That movie came out when I had like that freedom of being able to go out and see movies.
Right after you got your license and everything.
And well, I lived within walking distance of the theater.
Okay.
And man, I saw that movie. I know 3 times in theater, and I loved it every single time. It was just it was such a blast.
It's a good one.
It is a great film. It's a perfect Indiana Jones movie.
And it's funny because when you rewatch it, you're like, hurry up and get to the Sean Connery part. Hurry up and get to the Sean Connery part. Because it's like 20 minutes before he shows up.
I love that movie. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie, but I have to say, Crusade is it's pretty close. I mean,
yeah,
it may be even a more perfect movie than Raiders is, but Raiders I have a soft spot for. But like, there's something perfect about The Last Crusade, from its content to it, from the story to the cast. It's just a great movie.
And
such a great movie.
and it's.
I mean, you already know some characters. You're getting not reintroduced. They're just mixing old characters back in. So I can't say that it's my favorite. The discovery that you go through in Raiders is unique, but what you get in The Last Crusade most likely should have been the last Indiana Jones anyway. Made for a perfect close to that trilogy, in my opinion. It's perfect.
And Sean Connery has a lot to do with that.
Absolutely.
In that particular film. I think one of my favorite scenes is...
I know the one you're going to say.
Well, you may not. This is...
Okay.
But if I don't get to it, please bring it back around. They're on the
motorcycle.
No, it's not the motorcycle.
It's the motorcycle. It's the
Man,
best scene.
you were trying. Okay, they're setting in the blimp, the Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And Indy is just sitting there going, well, you never talked to me. You didn't care or whatever.
It was just the two of us, Dad. It was a lonely way to grow up. For you, too. If you'd been an ordinary average father like the other guys' dads, you'd have understood that.
Actually, I was a wonderful father.
When?
Did I ever tell you to eat up, go to bed, wash your ears, do your homework? No, I respected your privacy, and I taught you self-reliance.
What you taught me was that I was less important to you than people who'd been dead for 500 years in another country. And I learned it so well that we've hardly spoken for 20 years.
You left just when you were becoming interesting.
Dad,
Very well. Huh, I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?
I can't think of anything.
Then what are you complaining about?
And he's got nothing to say.
I know, and Indy's like,
I taught you self-reliance.
yes. Yeah, but that's one of my favorite scenes. But Matt, please continue to what were you saying? The
No,
motorcycle.
I hate that movie. That's not worth talking about, that movie.
Well, I think one of my favorite scenes is the end when Indiana is about to fall into that chasm and he's reaching for the cup, and there's that moment where his dad looks at him and he's just like, let it go, son.
I can't hold on. I can get it. I can almost reach it, Dad.
Indiana. Let it go.
He calls him Indiana for the first time in the movie.
Is that when he says it?
He says,
but
Indiana.
I mean, it feels like a real moment between a father and a son.
Oh, yeah,
where the
absolutely.
father is like, hey, come on, let's, you don't need it.
Mine isn't nearly as touching. Mine's when he's on the motorcycle and Connery's in the sidecar and he keeps beating all the Nazis on the bike. And
his dad looks
Indiana
pissed.
Jones is so he's excited, he's winning. He looks
Yeah.
over and his father has that sour look,
like
disapproving.
You're killing people. That's what you're doing.
So
Look what you did.
I can't believe what you did.
I love the scene where they're in the plane and he's got the gun and he shoots.
Oh, he shoots. Oh my God!
And that look on his face when he realizes what he's done, and then he turns around and just lies to him.
Dad, are we hit? More or less. Son, I'm sorry. They got us.
That is genius.
Every scene with those two in it is great. Even the scene where they're in the tank with Brody. I love that scene too. I love all those scenes with Sean Connery.
I like when he reunites with Brody and they do that song.
Oh, that little handshake thing.
It's a rescue chap. Let's go.
How does one get off these things? Oh,
yeah, that's a great movie. That's a great role.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, okay, favorite Connery Bond movie. Go, whoever.
Mine'll be Goldfinger. It's the first one I saw, and it's a great movie.
Yes, it is. I just watched it recently. Mike, your favorite Connery Bond? You just recently went on a trek through all the Bond movies.
Yeah, you're fresh.
So you should be relatively fresh in your head.
I guess it'll be a toss-up between Dr. No and Thunderball. I think Dr. No is like almost like a perfect movie, but I think the underwater battle is like amazing, and to this day has nothing like that has not been topped. So
yeah,
I really, and especially the brutality of it, because they're using those spear guns.
The harpoons.
I mean, it's a pretty violent scene, and when you watch it, it's really so well choreographed.
You know,
It's
that scene
just-
must have influenced so much because as a kid, that kind of like frogman with spear guns, spy kind of thing was like, it just went together with spies, you know, like frogmen swimming underwater with spear guns fighting each other is part of espionage to me.
Yeah.
Like that whole image. What about you, Jared?
My favorite's From Russia with Love. I know me and Mike talked about this a little bit because I don't think Mike was quite as taken with it as I am. It has Robert Shaw as the villain. Well, this was years before Quint came along. I don't know why I like it so much.
That movie's really popular with Bond fans. I don't know why. I guess because I think the thing with it for me is there isn't really any action until the end.
Yeah.
But when you get to the end, there's a lot of
that's
action.
like that fight they have on the train is like really it's very, I mean, even for today, it's very visceral.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like those guys are really punching each other, and it's in very close quarters, and it just feels like dangerous. So, and I think I really have a crush on the Bond girl in that one.
Yes,
She's
you
the
mentioned that.
Russian blonde lady. But
what about top Sean Connery movie like of all time? What's your favorite?
I'm gonna have to say Last Crusade.
Yeah, I think mine too.
I mean, I think that's probably my favorite.
That or Zardoz.
Obviously I love Last Crusade, but also I have another movie that I really liked as a kid was Time Bandits.
I don't believe it.
You don't believe what?
I don't believe the way you killed him.
Yes. But it has to be done sometimes.
No, I mean, that's such a good shot. I bet you've killed lots of people.
Well, the gods must have given you a name.
Oh, yeah, Kevin.
Kevin?
I think he's really terrific in that movie.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a
feel
great
bad-
movie too.
You feel
Time
bad.
Bandits is so unique.
You feel bad for Kevin when the bandits come and take him away. He's like, why did you take me? I mean, because Sean Connery as Agamemnon, I can't say it.
Agamemnon.
He was so good. I mean, he was so kind. And when they rob him and take Kevin away, he's so pissed. So, and rightly so. But yeah. And the Untouchables. Untouchables is great.
Oh, yes, of course.
Sean Connery, he's more than a man. He was a legend of a man. And he's one of those old school Hollywood actors that they're just rare or don't exist anymore. He's from the old breed. So It's sad to see them pass on, but we're sure lucky enough to have at least been kids for when he was still making some great movies. So I've got great memories of Sean Connery. I always keep him with me.
I think probably like Harrison Ford may be the last.
Yeah, he's pulling up the rear of that train.
All right, guys. Well, that's our Sean Connery tribute for here on the hyperspace. So please come back and see us next week. We're going to have a brand spanking new shrink-wrapped episode for you, ready to go on Monday. So come back and see us, won't you?
Sit a spell.
You know you can't live without this content. So subscribe to The Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.